For those of you who don't know him yet, Yoni is a serial entrepreneur, founded eToro about 10 years ago and grew it from inception to one of the most successful fintechs in Israel today, fintech unicorn, and the world's largest social trading platform. Happy to have you with us today. I want to maybe take the next half hour to hear a little bit more about how it all started. I was there, but you guys weren't. So to hear a little bit more about how it all came to be, such an unbelievably successful company in Israel. And let's kick it off. Let's hear about when it all started about 10 years ago.
So it's actually 12 years ago.
12 years ago. It's like...
And my wife came to me and she said, you got to do something with your life.
No, that was not at all.
But so it started, I've been a trader and sort of passionate about capital markets since I was very young. I got some shares from my father for my bar mitzvah, and ever since sort of traded the markets and loved the way how capital markets sort of connect people all around the world. And since then I've been sort of a finance geek, constantly trading with multiple screens. And I started eToro with my brother, Ronen Asya, who's our chief product officer and my co-founder, and he used to sort of make fun of me that I have an accountant fetish, that I am a finance geek sitting in front of multiple screens trading the markets. And we started this brainstorm of how do we open the financial markets for more people, for everyone to trade and invest in a simple and transparent way. And through that, basically, we started this a very long journey of eToro, of simplifying and creating an investment and trading platform for the masses.
So that I do remember. I actually do remember when we used to come back from dates, he would sit on his 4 screens, like showing what's going on in every different place in the world. And the people in Asia just woke up, and then people in the US just woke up. And remember Ronen said, like, how can you even? Like, we need something more intuitive than that. And that's how, I guess, it all began. But tell us maybe about your first time with Bitcoin. And what made you become fascinated with the trend? And you're in Israel considered to be one of the the man to go to, and a real thought leader. You've been talking about this for years and years now. So tell us about when it became interesting for you.
OG is actually old gangster. I didn't know that. Original gangster. So one of the reasons, by the way, they call them original gangsters is because when we started with Bitcoin in 2010, I remember a lot of people were extremely worried about it. This was all around sort of, still to some extent is, but money laundering, terror financing, how do you deal with this? But since when we started eToro, this was just 2007, 2008 was the first year of sort of operating, and then sort of came the global financial crisis, and we were connected already to sort of the banks to trade large volumes of FX, and 2 things that were interesting. One is you realize as a technologist that the entire market infrastructure is broken. So we trade with multiple banks, but we need to reconcile 2-3 days after. There's constant errors. We open a trade with Goldman, then need to close it with Deutsche, and then need Citi to reconcile in between. So the entire system is really not connected. Everything is broken. And the second part is what we realized then, and I'm quite thankful to a lot of my investors who used to call and shout at me back then, that your money in the bank isn't really safe. And for me, that was sort of a hallelujah moment. And I remember we had to move money because you had no idea the next day which bank is going to actually open. And you needed to move money from one bank to another just to diversify what I thought before was money. And you realize that, one, from a technology point of view, this entire system of capital markets is very archaic and broken. Banks in Israel are still based on software in COBOL from the 70s or 80s, and a lot of the exchange infrastructure around the world. And the second is there's a real question on what is money that's been a status quo for a while. And then 2 years later...
So what is money?
Money is a belief system. It is, in my opinion, the greatest invention ever made by humanity. And that's very simple for people in the VC world to understand. So in the VC world, you usually measure either number of users and number of usage. So how many times do people use it every day? And I would say the biggest inventions are probably electricity and money. Nothing's compared to that from the usage. And it is an invention that we invented and has been in the same status quo for the, let's say 100, 200 years. Fiat money, closer to 100, but government issued money for the last couple of 100 years. So the entire concept is sort of very much doesn't shift a lot. And I think we're in a sort of period in time where there's actually a chance to change the status quo of what is money. And when we started looking at Bitcoin, the initial sort of aha moment, very similar to when I started sort of surfing the internet in '96, looking at the internet, download, let's say, Simpsons episodes, and you realize that everything is connected and you can get information from all around the world. Then as a finance geek, when I started paying people in the Ukraine to code stuff where I didn't meet them before, and I just posted things on Bitcoin Talk to ask them to do something and then send them Bitcoins, it's 100 times more efficient and more connected than the current financial system. And you realize that is the future. So we just got fascinated ever since. And it's sort of, we went through these cycles. Now it's actually a much better cycle because when we started dealing with it, it was extremely taboo and something that a company that's regulated as a financial services company should simply not touch. Then, after Mt. Gox, it was a different type of taboo. It was like, you idiot, you see it was all fraud, why are you touching this still? I think now people understand more that it's here to stay and that it's a very big revolution.
Your investors still yell at you?
No, not anymore. Just because
Didn't think so.
We made shitloads of money through it, so.
Okay, so you started to talk about tokenization when you invented color coins in 2012, and you had Vitalik, the founder of Ethereum, work with you on that. Now, what do you think was the reason that colored coins failed?
I think, so first of all, now we're actually working on tokenizing assets. So it's been 7 years since we started talking about it, and actually acquired a company that iAngels invested in. I don't know if you knew, but we're working on tokenization, and I'm a very big believer. Basically, moving traditional financial assets, the $140 trillion of assets under management today, into the blockchain, that's a very long process, but it's almost an inevitable process. It's like looking at the invention of electricity and thinking there's still going to be sort of mechanical operated things not through electricity. So if you think about it, then this entire world is going to move into the blockchain. And that is the process of tokenization, of tokenizing PE, public markets, FX markets, commodities, art, real estate, diamonds. Basically, every single asset out there is going to get tokenized. And eventually, people might not understand that it actually has been tokenized and trades freely on the back end on the blockchain versus segmented 100 different databases of 100 different banks. So, and I think the big reason colored coins sort of didn't emerge in 2012 is, one, we were significantly premature. Second is we looked at a different asset class. We thought of the benefits of tokenizing current assets into the blockchain, and we wanted to do it on the Bitcoin network. So a couple of things. One, we were premature to the market, period. The market didn't understand tokenization at all then. Second, Bitcoin wasn't ready. You could claim, by the way, that Bitcoin still isn't ready because it's slow, block size is limited, number of transactions per second is limited, so it's not well suited for finance. And basically, that's also what Vitalik said. Vitalik said Bitcoin is not meant for tokenization and for financial instruments. We need to build another blockchain, and I'm the idiot who told him that's too complex, and he went away. But I think it was premature, and the technology is still not there. So we're doing it now, but we originally wanted to build a lot of decentralized stuff, but even the Ethereum network is still not there from a capacity point of view for the speed required and the scale required to run basically fintech. So we're running centralized things, settling on the blockchain. It's going to take maybe another 2-3 years before everything scales to where you can run something like eToro with 400, 500,000 transactions a day on the blockchain.
I'm going to come back to that because I know you guys are doing a lot of tokenization today, but I want to take a step back for people who are less familiar. So tell us what eToro is all about today. Like it all began with providing a lot more like a transparent and seamless experience for traders to start, trading capital markets. Now you're in a completely different zone. You're active across so many different new initiatives. Share a little bit about where you guys are at, and then we'll talk about tokenization some more.
So eToro today has 10 million registered users from 140 countries, where we enable users to trade stocks, commodities, indices, currencies, and cryptocurrencies in a very simple user experience. And all of our users can actually communicate with one another and see, follow, and automatically copy top traders in the network.
People call it the Facebook of finance.
Hopefully, we're still short 990 million users, but we're working on it. And we basically enable every user to become basically a portfolio manager where other people can see them, see their track record across time and copy them. And then we've opened that up to basically our thematic investments. So we have an investments team actually creating things like CRISPR technology or biotech, where we take the big public companies across a certain sector, enable people with a click of a button to basically invest in those themes. Crypto has been very kind to us, so it returned a favor, which is now we're returning a favor and looking at companies to acquire. Crypto has been very kind to us, and throughout the crypto mania, we've grown roughly 600% in 2016 to 18. We did about $1 trillion in volume last year. And sort of significantly also scaled the operation. We're 650 people today. Just recently launched the US. Last year bought and launched in Australia. Just announced launching in South Africa as well soon. So scaling the business.
So let's talk about two initiatives that are exciting that are happening today at eToro. One is eToro X, and the other is the Good Dollar.
First of all, look, I have new socks. It's the eToro X socks. So anybody who wants new cool socks.
Didn't even see those.
So eToro X is our blockchain subsidiary. Basically, the eToro platform enables users to invest in cryptocurrencies or in thematic copy portfolios of cryptocurrencies. But until recently, we haven't enabled sort of the core technology, which is the blockchain technology for our users, which is send and receive those cryptos or convert those cryptos between one another. And by the way, the biggest reason for that was actually regulatory-wise. It was very hard for our existing regulators to look at the trading platform and investment platform and enable it for all of our users to basically do what's called third-party transfers and transfers money to one to another. So we got another license, a Gibraltar-based distributed ledger technology license, which is one of the only countries in the world which actually enabled a specific license for blockchain companies. And we launched the eToro wallet, which enables today users to basically send, receive. It's a multi-chain, multi-blockchain, multi-signature wallet that enables people to send and receive and convert cryptocurrencies directly. And we're now launching our exchange. What's unique in our exchange is we're also taking a part in tokenizing traditional assets and enabling people to trade those on our exchange. I
Give some
tell more because
examples.
we're launching it just next week, and my PR team told me not to say anything.
So we can't talk about specific tokens.
But we are launching it next week, and super excited about sort of starting the process of tokenizing existing financial instruments into the blockchain.
Excellent. Now let's talk a little bit about Good Dollar, because Good Dollar is also, I think, when was the first blog that you wrote about the Good Dollar? I think this was also something around like
2008.
2008 was the first one.
Yeah.
So this concept has been on the brain for well over a decade, and now it seems that in terms of like the maturity, the acceptance, sentiment, like people actually understand what you're talking about, which is great. I remember even you had to explain it to me like 3 times for me to get it, like back then. So share a little bit what's going on, why it's so exciting. You have a dedicated team now working on the Good Dollar at eToro.
So first of all, the Good Dollar is a social impact project. It's a non-profit that we've established in eToro. Sort of for me, it's sort of, I would say, a purpose, a very long-term mission, something that I started working on more than 10 years ago and very happy to keep on working it for the next 30 years. And the core problem that we're tackling is 2 very known sort of problems in society, somewhat related to the last fireside chat as well. One is the increase in inequality in the world. So the fact basically that a lot of people understand poor get poorer, rich get richer, dogma. And the second, which I now understand very, very well, is the unbanked. So there's about over 2 billion people in the world that can access financial services. So why do I care? Because those are potentially 2 more billion users for eToro, right? In 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. So the same way that sort of Facebook wants to connect everybody to the internet so people can have Facebook accounts, I want everybody to have financial accounts so they can eventually get services from eToro. And those 2 problems are very much connected. So first of all, there's a big issue around global regulation. There is no global regulation. So you need to create things that's decentralized, and that's how we got inspired from blockchain. And the second part is, and that's also the biggest issue in crypto today, in order to use crypto, in order to use the blockchain, you have to first have money in an account where you can buy crypto. And I think that's a very big opportunity and potentially the killer application of the blockchain. And that's something that resonates very, very well, and everybody understands free money. And I think that Bitcoin is a form of free money. We created money out of thin air, same as XRP and Ether. And I think now people understand that basically money is a social contract. It's a smart social contract that people agree on the value of something. And miners and how Bitcoin works is one type of incentive. But we believe in the Good Dollar that if you can actually build a network where you give people good dollars and you enable them to hack the user experience to create value, that you eventually create something. So if we can reach 10 million, 100 million, or 1 billion people with blockchain wallets, and basically what we do is every person who logs in every day can claim $1 good a day. So you open the wallet, you get 100 good dollars, you bring a friend, you get another 5 good dollars, and then every day you log in, you basically get $1 good. And we believe through that, we can connect millions of people into a blockchain wallet to actually be able to send and receive not only a new kind of money that actually makes the world fairer because everybody can connect to it. It's not a regulated financial institution that needs to do AML and KYC, et cetera, which then increases the bar. It's global, it's decentralized, there's no fees to sending transactions, and you actually give some money to people, you give some good dollars to people so they can actually start playing with it, which makes it much easier for people to actually use the money that they received for free. Now, what we found out across time, much after the 2008 blog, is there's actually a big thought movement around, like thought leadership movement around what's called universal basic income, which is a lot of very smart people, whether it's Elon Musk or Mark Zuckerberg, or even Martin Luther King, and actually goes before that, thought that if you actually give people free money, you will actually potentially end poverty and actually significantly increase the entire value and economy of basically either, state, etc. The problem is you can't really run it from a government without having a significant amount of the people saying, why do we need to pay more taxes for people to actually benefit from it? And the idea of universal basic income on the blockchain is it's governmentless. You can actually build it, you can actually distribute it, you can actually have something decentralized run in an extreme scale of potentially 1 billion people without really governments either being needed to do it or to scale it, to fund it, or being able to stop it.
So let's talk just for one more minute about that, about the whole dogma that you said that the richer get richer and the poorer get poorer. How do you reach like a better equilibrium using good dollar?
So we've brought in a couple of economists to basically do analysis of the model, and what we are building is actually somewhat based on biblical terms of what's called in the Bible tether. So we're just setting inflation rate of that actually gets down to 10% a year. So when people log in and claim their one good dollar, it basically inflates the entire currency to 10% a year. And what that means, it changes the paradigm which exists today, where if a country wants to issue money, it basically creates quantitative easing and actually gives money to the large banks that's connected to the central bank. And a lot of times the problem with that is the people who actually make that money then is the banks. And instead saying, okay, if this is a decentralized network, let's take that inflation and actually give it to everyone directly with one good dollar a day. The reason there's another sort of interesting game theory around that is if I'll connect to it, I'll probably won't collect my one good dollar a day for two reasons. One, it's a public blockchain, so people can actually see I collect it every day. And second is I don't necessarily need the one good dollar a day because it doesn't impact my life significantly, right? So a person who has sufficient money either won't claim it because he doesn't want other people to see that he's claiming charity, or he doesn't do it because, maybe it's 10 cents a day. Would you log in to do something for 10 cents a day? No, but there's 1 billion people who would. So that creates sort of a game theory where the people who will actually claim the good dollars are probably the people who need it most, which actually falls under a very interesting theory, which is the theory of justice by John Rawls, who wrote basically that the right distribution is so that the people who need it most would get it.
Excellent. Thank you. So what do you think? This is like what date night looks like, right? This is like every day. So what do you think about current buzzwords, such as IEOs, stable coins, some of the topics that have been discussed recently?
So first of all, we're very, very big fans of stablecoins. I think stablecoins is the process of tokenizing the traditional financial assets into the blockchain. And what it generates, better it reduces credit risk potentially, it increases liquidity so people can actually transfer assets from one place to another. and it's very good use of blockchain technology. Again, it doesn't remove risk, right? So if you have money in a financial institution, you are exposed to the credit risk of that financial institution. If that financial institution tokenizes those assets on the blockchain, it doesn't reduce your credit risk, but it enables you to actually remove it from their platform, sell it to somebody else very fast, maybe in a discount, and therefore it reduces liquidity risk, which is very important, especially in 2008 style crises. It also creates the ability to actually do really, really cool stuff with smart contracts. So as a finance geek, I love the concepts of doing financial derivatives, options, swaps, forwards, futures, complex derivatives. And it's really hard to do that. Every time we try to do with financial institution today a complex derivative, that requires for me to spend a lot of money on lawyering up, basically. Because, by the way, it's very hard with the bulge brackets to do deals around complex derivatives. You need to lawyer up, because when shit hits the fan, you'll find out that their lawyers were better. But through smart contracts, you can actually create a lot of things very fast that have never existed before on a small scale. It maybe existed between Goldman and the government in Greece and some banks in Malaysia, but it doesn't exist in sort of an ecosystem, which is super interesting, which is all the finance geeks and technology. Regarding IEOs, which is the new concept of ICOs, so ICOs are dead long-live IEOs. It's a very interesting model. It basically says initial exchange offering. So instead of companies just issuing themselves a coin, and then the main problem is corporate governance, reliance, and ethics. And I have to admit, I invested in about 20 ICOs, and I actually invested in ICOs which were complete fraud, which is very unfortunate. But that's the risk you're taking when you're investing in ICOs. And the problem there is corporate governance, reliance, who did due diligence, how do you do diligence? Of course, one easy way is to do it through iAngels,
Right here.
which also reduces that risk, because you have someone who does that due diligence for you. In IOs, you basically centralize that due diligence process to the exchange, and you rely on companies such as BitterX or Binance, who started with Launchpad, or potentially eToro X, disclaimer why I'm biased towards this, to actually do the due diligence, make sure there's corporate governance in place, make sure that the team actually has some responsibility and liability towards token holders. It's still, by the way, unclear exactly how that happens, but that's the potential.
So you missed my actually opening presentation earlier in the morning, but I'll share with you. I had a slide that shares about how kind of like next-gen investors are becoming, entrepreneurs who are investing entrepreneurs, companies such as these that are going to become an invaluable and intrinsic part of the investment process. So do you think this is the future for like how investments are going to be done in the future? Specifically around this.
Specifically IEOs or entrepreneurs investing in entrepreneurs?
Both. So these are some companies where they've never been part of IEOs. IEOs is a new animal, but now they're going to take a very important role in that and facilitate investment in a way that hasn't been done before.
So first of all, I think we all understand here that there's new ways of investing in startups, right? Whether it's IEOs, ICOs, iAngels, a lot of stuff starting with I. And I think more people are investing because of it in startups, which is also awesome because it enables entrepreneurs to sort of go slay dragons. But there's a requirement still on every ecosystem, and we saw it sort of very rapidly in the crypto market, but I think we're seeing it very much in Silicon Valley. The bubble, in order for people to be able to raise funds easily, investors had make money somehow easily, right? So easily is whether you invested in the right time in Google or Tesla, or whether it's public or private, but you need that cycle of success to basically enable people to raise money, more money, sort of bigger funds to kill bigger dragons, or just easier funding, so you have more of these ideas. And the Silicon Valley really has this amazing ecosystem where valuations just grow and grow and grow and grow. And I think now we're seeing this more also in Israel. Israel is a great ecosystem, though with a significant annoying discount to valuations in the US, which as an entrepreneur pisses me off. But I think that crypto is interesting and IEOs are interesting because that potentially sort of changes that to a global scale, right? So suddenly blockchain entrepreneurs is something very, very, very global, where cyber entrepreneurs are either Israeli Silicon Valley based or either Silicon Valley based or Israeli. Blockchain entrepreneurs sort of all see a very far similar envisioned future where everything is on the blockchain.
I agree. So it's like very global teams, not region specific, which brings me to my next question before we open up to Q&A. So where do you see Toro in the next 3 to 5 years? Your guys are also building a global team, trying to take over the world. How do you think that becomes a real benefit or a real advantage in running a company, or how does it help you scale?
Sure. So I think today there's a huge opportunity for basically people to basically take financial services, personal finance, sort of in general. We're providing a big part of that, which is trading and investing in the assets that we enable people to trade in, sort of grow in time. So we're constantly adding more and more assets into the platform. In some places like the UK, we're gradually becoming a significant brand. So when you ask people in the street, where do you invest in crypto assets, they will say Toro. Where do you invest in stocks, they will say Toro. But we've been able to really scale that today, mostly in the UK and to some extent in Germany. And in a lot of other countries, we're sort of catching up. France is now catching up significantly. Now there's two big markets which are still relatively small for us. It's China and the US. So obviously scaling up there an investments platform for people to trade and invest in a simple and transparent way is a huge opportunity. And we plan to be basically amongst the 5 largest investment platforms in each of the regions that we tackle in the next 5 years. Within that space also, I believe we'll be able to start offering, and that's what we learned and saw in the crypto space. When you have a great asset, that people want that asset and can't access that asset anywhere else. So we were the only platform in Europe offering to trade Ethereum and XRP in 2017. And because we were the only ones basically capturing a huge market of people searching for Ethereum and XRP, then we saw sort of this entire trend. People came into eToro, bought Ethereum for $8, then sold it at $400 or $1,000. People bought XRP at 3 cents and went all the way to $3. By the way, people also did the opposite. So this is my compliance officer in me saying disclaimer. People also lost money when they came in $20,000 Bitcoin and lost, which was less exciting. But when you have these big trends and these assets where people have problems accessing it, which I think real estate is such an asset, fixed income is such an asset, art is such an asset, diamonds are such an asset. So a lot of these assets, once they become blockchained, will be probably one of the only firms in the world offering them on a global scale. And if you think about it sort of, and again, I'm a big fan of the bulge brackets, the Morgans, Goldmans, etc. Again, I'm a finance geek because they connect all the different markets together, but they connect them for either very rich people or for financial institutions. I believe we need to take that ability to access everything in the world and make it accessible to everyone. And that's where we want to get, whether it's in the next 5 years or the next 10 years.
Excellent. Before we break out to Q&A, I think something that always fascinates people is to understand, because you speak so eloquently about blockchain, about technology, what part of the business is it for you, like the crypto business?
So it went from 2%, we launched Bitcoin trading in the end of 2013, A really great timing, by the way, just before Mt. Gox went bankrupt. So for like 3 years, that was 2% of our business. In 2017-18, in the peak, it went to 85% of our business. And now it's back to roughly 10%. So now it's sort of the range is roughly 10% of revenues in eToro are coming from crypto. Assets-wise, actually, it's bigger. So from the amount of assets under custody or assets under management in eToro, it's roughly 40-50%.
Cool. Q&A. This is your time. This is the chance, guys. Yes, Gil.
Does your wife still think you play games?
What? Video games?
Well,
Xbox.
I think you made something out of your life finally.
Now I bought now an Xbox for my son, so that's my excuse.
Well, I'll disclose right away that I'm a shareholder. But the reason I became a shareholder is because I visited your office. And I don't know why it took me into the French part. I happen to speak French, so I spent some very quality time. And you impressed me as being a competitor of Schwab or Fidelity, where I have accounts, or any of the other ones. Only that, as far as I know, they don't deal in cryptocurrencies and bitcoins. But since you are a geek and since you're so advanced and you look into those things, clearly it is a battle of control between governments, central banks, European Bank, Federal Bank, Russia and so forth, and China, trying to create their own kind of, and even Saudi Arabia now threatening to get out of the US dollar for trading oil. You are actually hoping to be very disruptive, and Friedman, the famous Nobel Prize, actually forecasted Bitcoins, but I still don't see very well how all these forces are going to hit each other, and other the fact that Dimon, the CEO of JP Morgan, claims to have the largest number of patents in blockchain, and IBM is in there. So the big guys are in there already. So how do you see this, and how do you see, are you already on the US market?
Yes, we launched in the US. So there's two basically lines of thought, and then sort of a thread connecting them. So every single bank in the world, whether it's, by the way, central banks, governments, or JP Morgan's, bulge brackets, etc., realizes now that there's a huge force that's going to disrupt the sort of how do you issue money, how do you create money. It will become digital. That's an inevitable, right? So most central banks now have teams working on what's called a central bank digital currency. And they do a lot of research on it, and they're trying to sort of not do it yet. And the reason is because all the big banks who are now in charge of printing the money are telling them that if they'll do that, they'll go bankrupt and they'll completely destroy society as we know it. Because Jamie Dimon has also launched now JP Morgan coin, right? So there's a competition about the creation of money between basically three forces. Government, who you would think actually has it, but they don't. Existing banks who actually print all the money that we use today, because nobody here or elsewhere, unless you're royal family in the UK, have money in a central bank. And let's call them the citizens, us hackers, right? Internet companies, I would still centralized. Okay, yeah, for tech companies, Facebook, Google. We're probably going to see the Facebook coin or whatever they're building as well. Now, or citizens, right? So Bitcoin is sort of money created by the people, for the people, uncontrolled by anyone. Now, what unifies everything here is the term blockchain, right? So everything here is going to be blockchain. This is the JP Morgan blockchain, this is the Bitcoin blockchain, this is the Facebook blockchain. And eventually, the nice thing about digitizing assets is once they're digitized on blockchains, you can move them and sort of peg them between one blockchain to another. So there's one way of thinking about it is one will win, okay? Which is, you know, you'd be buying JP Morgan's stock right now. Or you basically realize that when all these happen together, that probably means Bitcoin is going to significantly appreciate in value. And the reason is because it's going to probably be hard to move assets between the Chinese blockchain, Russian blockchain, and the US blockchain, but you should be able to convert assets from each of them to Bitcoin and then back to that blockchain. So I think we're looking at a multi-blockchain world where we're going to have national blockchains, big bank blockchains, technology firms blockchains, and public blockchains, and there's going to be a lot of connectivity between them. And I don't think that it's a one player sort of takes all game at all.
Do you see a major crisis with devaluation of everything, with all
Yes.
those?
We're gonna see the largest bank run in human history sometime in the next 30 years. I think once again, logic says that if you look at fiat currency and how governments manage fiat currency, and you're potentially looking at people realizing that there is other assets who are deflationary rather than inflationary without sort of monetary potential problems, I think we have a very good chance of seeing a huge, large-scale bank run. Big question of where it's going to happen. By the way, last 4 years, we saw Venezuela, Brazil, Turkey, Russia, all going through some level of devaluation. Those are very large economies, or were. Russia still is, Turkey still is. But I think the size of the currency wars that we're going to see is going to get significantly amplified by nationalism, trade wars, populism, and technology.
Next question, in the back.
Can you disclose what the complete assets under management are for eToro? And do you have an intention of being a publicly traded company?
We do have intentions of being a publicly traded company. It's all about timing, the internal timing for us, whether it's the right time for us to be public, and timing of the market. So we're in the right size to be a significant public company already, and in the long term, I do believe that's the right thing for eToro. But it's all about sort of combining those two windows of opportunity. We currently don't disclose numbers of assets under management or revenues. We did around $1 trillion in volume last year. That is a number we are saying, because I love the number trillion and saying trillion.
Just like to say that. Okay, next question. Yes.
So many questions. I'll start
Start with one.
I'll start with one. So both for X in the US and I guess for Goodcoin, your vision with both Facebook and Coinbase, you basically in both are going to have a runner-up strategy. And I'd love to know what you're thinking about how to have that runner-up strategy, and if you're using some of the guarantees that and the potential that blockchain itself has to give more guarantees to the end users and use them as an incentive for more usage. That's one. I'll add another one. So I'd love to see the economics of good money, but
right.
Generally speaking, I mean, inflation is taxes by other means. You're
Right.
transferring from whoever's holding to whoever's taking.
Good dollar, and we're very, by the way, everything is open source in Good Dollar. Everything is in the public domain. Every single Excel we're doing, we're just putting it on the website. There's a position paper, and we're very happy to share the information. It's not really taxes if it's money we invented, right? So if I create inflation on money that I invented, nobody can say it's taxes, right? You can claim that governments will want to tax maybe people getting
holders because
good dollars. No, but again,
it's
it's not really taxes if you're getting it for free, right? So you're just getting less things for free. It is a way. Inflation is a distribution mechanism basically, which is not that efficient in how it works today because generally it's linear, right? Interest rate is even a more unfair distribution mechanism because basically if you're very rich, you're going to get higher interest on your deposits and you're going to get basically you'll be able to get loans for lower interest rate than a person who has less money, right? Which is the opposite of fairness. And not really required in a digital world. It's required when you need somebody to actually go over each loan and you have some human cost involved in it. If everything is automated, the opposite is correct because the credit risk is bigger with big investors or richer investors. The part of distribution, I think we haven't heard Coinbase doing similar things to what we're doing with the good dollars. We do see both Binance and Coinbase in the give crypto space, Binance with the Charity Labs. So the big crypto companies understand something very interesting around crypto. It's a way to distribute funds to a lot of people very fast, very easily. And that potentially has a disruptive force, both from a brand point of view, both from doing good point of view, both from actually showing usage on micro scale. I don't think it's a runner-up necessarily because I don't necessarily think, again, there's a real first to market approach here. If you're able to create value, I think, by the way, what is correct around all of these initiatives, it's not initiatives where you hire salespeople and marketing people to promote something. It's something that's very organic. So charity, by definition, on large scale creation of money is build it and they will come, which what happened with Bitcoin and Ethereum. From a business point of view, that's not necessarily very good, doesn't connect well to the do you want to go IPO, right? Because IPO is all about predictability and building streams of revenues. In these worlds where you're trying to create sort of free money, where you're trying to connect 1 billion people that are unbanked today, I think it's really about experimentation. It's more similar to the creation of new products or very early stage VC. You create different types of incentives and then you stand back and you watch how it actually works, how are people using it, and you constantly tinker. Which is why we call it the good dollar experiment. And what we're launching soon will be number 1. And when it fails, and it will fail, we'll launch good dollar experiment number 2.
Next question. Yes.
I'm looking at your website, and I think we are more talking about the cryptocurrencies, but you also mentioned that stocks, index, commodities, oil, natural gas, all these things. Now, is your platform is available for anyone in any markets?
For people from about 140 people, it's available to countries, or for people from 140 countries, yeah.
Yeah, so because I was just looking at, is it available in Canada? Because I just
no, so Canada, Turkey, Japan, and a couple of others are not in those 140 countries. So basically, we're regulated today in Australia, UK, Europe, South Africa, US, and some other jurisdictions. And regulators generally have either the point of view where where it's okay for its citizens to invest overseas, which is the basis of a lot of fintech companies, same as iAngels, who have accredited investors from all over the place, and some places where the local regulator basically says, if you operate in my country, you need to have local regulation. Canada and Japan are very good examples of that.
Yeah, so for example, the interactive broker. So
yeah.
My question is like on the investment side, the stocks and anything, they are through the exchange. So let's say take the example of New York Stock Exchange or those US ones. Is your platform worked in the same way? Is
yeah.
a sign up with the New York Stock Exchange, then products is like the trading like?
So we don't offer the variety of products of interactive broker, but we do offer a much better user experience, actually cheaper than interactive brokers.
More affordable.
More affordable.
So if there's somebody who's actually residents of Canada or lives in Canada, can he open the account?
No.
And trade in US?
No, Canada. Actually, we're considering relaunching in Canada through the US regulation, but at the moment, we're not operating in Canada.
So more or less, your platform is.
That's again my compliance officer.
So, I'm asking the multiple question because the trading is one of the things that. So for example, in interactive brokers, the algo trading is been happening. and there are a lot of algos, and so this is the kind of the environment you guys also providing, like APIs.
So we do have APIs, but the majority of the platform are just retail investors sort of investing directly. The core part of the platform is for people who actually want a simple and easy user interface to the markets. Interactive Brokers is a great platform, but it's very complex and sophisticated to trade it unless you're a finance geek or passionate about trading, where our platform has a much more, we actually have more customers than Interactive Brokers. And the reason is because there's just more normal people than finance geeks.
Last question, then we can step outside to talk a little bit more about investments in iAngels. We can't wrap up before asking you if you think we're going to have a rally this year, and where is Bitcoin going to be at the end of the year? Or next year or the next following year? Which year?
My favorite answer is, first of all, this is me answering. This is not the position of the company or investment advice. I have very high belief that we will see Bitcoin moving past its previous highs and towards $50,000. Which year is the big question, which I do not know. So it might be this year, or it might be after the halving, which is a popular opinion, which means it's 2021. But when I invest in crypto, I'm looking at the potential of 10x for a long term, and then maybe having some fun in the middle of converting and trading one crypto to another in that process. But that's the view I take.
We'll talk about it at home. Thank you, guys. Thank you for joining us. I'd like to wrap up with a few... don't see.
Can I add? Sorry, we have live streamers that are shooting questions. So a couple from Australia just texted me about eToro's interest in Australia.
We're very interested in Australia. We're actually scaling up in Australia significantly. We're looking for partners, employees, media partners. We have, I think we've scaled around 5x the offices in Sydney, so we have offices in Sydney. And we're about to do some significant sort of promotions for eToro in Australia during 2019.
Any other important question before we finalize? No tapping in your ear. Good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.